Happy Wednesday, everybody. Thank you for joining me in the locker room on this April 19th. I'm Alan Locher. General Hospital made its premiere on ABC on April 1st, 60 years ago. Today, Emmy Award-winning casting director Mark Teschner is here to celebrate this incredible milestone. Mark has been the casting director for half his life almost, and for over 33 years, casting some of the most beloved characters that you tune into day in and day out. He also cast Port Charles from 1997 to 2003. Simultaneously, did some casting on Loving, among many other things. Mark has received 10 Daytime Emmy Awards for his work on General Hospital. He is also a 7-time recipient of the Casting Society of America's Artios Award. He has served on the Board of Governors of the Television Academy and is a former vice president of the Casting Society of America. It is my pleasure to welcome Emmy Award winner Mark Teschner to the locker room. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Alan. Happy to be here.
What is it? You and I were just talking backstage when you think that you've been somewhere for almost half your life, like what comes to your mind?
Wow, how did that happen? It's just, I love it. I'm thrilled to be able to say that I've been that long because I'm very passionate about the show and my work on it. And I remember living on the East Coast as a kid. General Hospital would be on at 3 o'clock in the background if I wasn't out playing sports. So I always had this awareness of this very iconic show. So
was your family watching it?
No, they were out at work, and in those days you really couldn't record anything. You had to be there in real time. But I was a baby boomer television guy, so it was always on. And so when I had the opportunity to do the show, usually you go to a show and it's a new show and you start, but to go onto a show that was so established, it was really pretty much a thrill. And I know this sounds corny. I still find it thrilling after all these years. I still get a rush when I walk on set, if I'm down to watch somebody work or just take it in for a little bit. The energy, it's just still gets to me.
That's awesome. I mean, that says a lot about the show, the people you work with. Energy. What has the energy been like around the studio for the 60th?
It's been really great. Everybody works so hard on the show. It is a complete team effort. When you're churning out 252 episodes a year, which if you really think about it, it sounds impossible. And when we're shooting 120 pages a day, you just work and you work and you work, and it's very easy to sometimes forget to celebrate that. Just the fact that we're on and people can watch us. But the 60th has really rallied people. There's been a wonderful energy about it. And the fact that the show's getting a lot of attention from that, whether it's People Magazine, just seems people are aware of it. And it's a good reminder to people that, hey, we're still here. We have fresh stories, new stories to tell, new characters. And it's been a really nice jolt of energy.
I love that. Do you watch every day?
Yes. Now, if I'm in my office, I'll have it on. If for some reason I'm in my office and too busy, I'll watch it that night on Hulu. So I'm not publicizing Hulu, but yeah, I watch it every day. Just, I read the script so I know what's being done, but I watch the taping every day. So I have a monitor in my office, and I also can watch it at home if I'm not in the office. So I can watch the taping and see the scenes that are being done that I'm interested in watching. So I'm very plugged into what's on air.
Do you read breakdowns or actual day-to-day scripts?
Both.
Wow.
I don't. When I get breakdowns, I'm more focused on what do I have to cast that's coming up. I mean, obviously I have to be aware of plot and things like that. But when I get new breakdowns, the first thing I go look for is, okay, who do I have to find that's new? And then I really just start the process of thinking about it and just getting ready to do it. And there's always somebody new. It could be, whether it's a series regular, Alan, it could be a day player. It could be what we call a recurring role, which is an actor that is not under contract but works all the time. although the audience might think they're under contract because they work so much. It could be what we call an under 5, which is 5 lines or less. I'm responsible for all of that. And that could be a doctor, nurse, somebody. So even those roles require a lot of thought, because when you're watching the show, you really want every note to be right. You want to have this beautiful painting, and you don't want to have a hole where there should be somebody coloring it out.
You just made me think of something, because I know Cynthia Watros, when she was in New York going to Guiding Light, she was cast as an under 5. Are there any General Hospital folks that you sort of used as under 5s that are now or have been in your 33 years on the show? Like they were, let's say, a limo driver, but then got a larger role that you recall?
I have to think about that, but that has happened where an actor who's done a very small or supporting role, when the right role comes up, we'll bring them in for series regular. And sometimes they'll remind me, I worked 10 years ago, I played Bobby for one day. And that's always kind of fun. And the other thing that we can do is sometimes a character can start as an under 5, and for whatever reason, the audience, the producers, the writers respond, and all of a sudden that character expands and grows. That does happen. I mean, I think a great example would be Lydia Look, who plays Selena. She started 6-7 years ago. Selena was an under 5. In fact, not only that, she didn't have a first name. She was Ms. Wu. But she said, this sounds fun. She came in and did it, and the role expanded, and now she's got a name, she's got a family. So that's a great example of how sometimes a very small supporting role can turn into something significant. And that's one of the things I love about the show. You never know. Those things are possible, and that's the magic of it. Because we're on so often, a primetime series, the 20 episodes is mapped out. But with us, if something catches lightning, the writers and the producers can expand on that and bring that character back and let that person develop. And that's that, there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's that just lightning striking.
Absolutely. Well, let's go back. You were born in Harlem, grew up in Scarsdale, and I believe you went to a Broadway show at 10 years old.
Yeah.
Talk about the impact of that Broadway show.
Well, pretty huge. Yeah, I was born in Harlem, New York, 138th Street. So I'm a New York City born boy. And I lived in Scarsdale, New York, which is about a half hour, 35 minutes out of the city. Fortunately for me, I had parents that were very into the arts. I grew up going to see ballet, the New York Ballet, and they took me to my first Broadway show. I think I was 10 years old. It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman. That was the musical, directed by Hal Prince, a very famous director. But the musical did not last long, but I just got hooked. And I started to see theater a lot. I started to do all the plays in high school. So with my parents, I was either going to the city to watch a Yankee game or see a show. And so I'm really lucky. Sometimes who we are, the foundation, is a product of where we're brought up. And I was very fortunate. I was brought up in an environment with parents that really loved the arts, supported it. And, I was hooked and I loved theater and going to it. And I guess I've always been on the path to do something in this business. And fortunately, I found something that I really love.
But you started acting yourself. You thought that's what you were going to do.
I thought I was an actor. When I was growing up, you didn't even know what a casting director was. You'd hear about them and you'd see a couple of credits in movies, but it wasn't a profession that had exploded the way it does now. Most people now have an awareness of what a casting director is. You go to a movie, you see it up front, casting by. It's a creative art form. But back then, there was no real awareness for me. So I became an actor. And after 2.5 years of doing it in New York City, I had an epiphany that I liked the idea of acting more than actually acting. And I got really lucky. I found, I was able to start as a casting assistant and work my way up, and never looked back. I knew the moment I started casting that was my calling. And I have to tell you, being a casting director, the actor Mark Teschner definitely made the right decision leaving. It's just insane how competitive it is, and you really have to have this, as an actor, this really thick skin to pursue it, and yet you have to have this kind, open heart to be a great actor. So it's quite the dichotomy. But I never looked back, never regretted. I never once say, "Oh, I wish I played." I shut the door and never reopened it.
It's so interesting. I toyed with it as an idea. I did it a little in college, but then I got a job at ABC as a sophomore in college as a page, and there I was on, and the thought of not making that paycheck all the time and having to do what actors have to do is just, it is a special breed. Like, you really have to have this stamina and strength to go out into the world and fight for, a small number, like you said earlier, of jobs.
Yeah, it being an actor, it's a special kind of breed. The exhilaration is incomparable, but the heartache and disappointment, there's a real pendulum swinging on that. And I respect any actor that's pursuing it and going for it and just still doing what they love. But definitely, I'm on the right side of things at the moment. I'm on the right side of the camera.
You certainly are, and a lot of people would agree and say thank you and be eternally grateful to you for that. But a little birdie told me that I should ask you to sing "It's Never Too Late" from The Boyfriend.
Okay, you spoke to Carolyn Hinsey. Yes.
I was blown away. You
Yes,
and Carolyn Hinsey went to high school.
We went to high school together, and I have to say it was a showstopper. I still have black and white still photos from that, and maybe I'll haunt Carolyn with them. But you're not going to get any singing today. But it was a fun time.
She is on my show on Friday. Email those pictures to me.
Well, they're in the office, and I'm not in this week, but I will email them at a separate time. It's just, and I love having a history with her, and the fact that she went into soap operas with all her contribution to the medium and her great writing. It's just a total fluke that we just happened to grow up together. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I loved it. I had no idea. Yeah. Talk about, you said, you had the epiphany and then you became a casting assistant. Where did you cut your teeth as a casting assistant and, to learn the ropes?
I heard about an opening in a casting office through my parents, friends of friends, which is very weird. And I went to work at that time for a woman in 1982 named Elisa Myers. And then we, after a couple of years, partnered. It was Myers Teschner. And we did we were based in New York, 3 Broadway shows, not worth talking about. Lots of regional theater, off Broadway, the occasional pilot. But for me, the big moment of change was when I heard that Loving, also on ABC, was looking for a casting director, somebody to come in and take over the casting. And I, found out about it. I literally went to the offices, dropped off a resume. There was no computer. There were no computers then. Got a call, went in and interviewed, and I cast Loving from 1985 to 1989. So that's where I segued into daytime and realized I love this. And one of the things I loved best was in daytime, you cast an actor, and 5-6 days later, you're actually watching them work. You're watching them monitor. You're watching them taping the show. And then 3 weeks after that, they're on the air. So as a casting director, you get this immediate gratification of seeing your work, as opposed to, you wait for a movie to come out that maybe does or doesn't. So for me, it was that instant gratification, and I loved it. And that was I was like, okay, this is really where I feel.
Well, and you're also, in daytime, and I can't imagine in other entertainment forms. I mean, you are really doing it daily because of the amount of, material we in daytime put out. Like you said, over 250 shows. It's, you continue to, hone your craft as a casting director, and it's sort of like the actors who do it in daytime. They are learning the craft because it is intense, and they are working and over and over and over again, having that opportunity. You cast 19-year-old Luke Perry on Loving. Talk about your friendship. Talk about what you saw in him at that time.
There was just something. It's one of those things where you know it when you see it. He was very raw. I believe he was paving driveways in LA when he got cast, and the audition tape came in, and we flew him in and tested him. And there was just something so charismatic and charming about him. And he was able to deliver. He was able to really make it work. It wasn't just, oh, I'm a good looking, charming guy. He really took it seriously. Unfortunately, he did not last long on the show. It was not a long run. We had this great teen storyline, and it sort of got jettisoned. We had a love triangle, and it was Luke Perry, Kelly Rutherford, and Terry Polo. All three, their first jobs and they were really good and really lovely. And it sort of worked out for them that it didn't really last as long as it should have, because it was just part of their journey. But Luke was very special, and we stayed in touch through the years. He'd reach out and say, hey, I'm in town from shooting Riverdale. Do you want to grab breakfast? In fact, I had breakfast with him a week before he passed away, which just completely added to the shock that everybody felt. It's so strange. You're laughing, you're looking at pictures of his kids, you hug goodbye, thinking, okay, I'll see you next time, maybe in a year when you're back, and we'll catch up some more. I'm just grateful that I had, a little extra time with him. He was a special guy to me. And I'm glad that I could be just a part of where he went. And I think after that, he got Another World, which ran longer. And of course, Beverly Hills 90210, where everybody grew sideburns for 2 years. So, it was just part of his journey was Loving. It was a brief stop, but it certainly was impactful because people became aware of him. And I'm glad that I could be part of his journey.
It's interesting. I love hearing you talk about seeing him, after, because it is a connection, you as the casting director or even casting assistants in your office, because I told the story. I was in Provincetown and bumped into Parker Posey, told her I worked at As the World Turns, and the first person she asked about was the casting assistant. And I just thought, and this is last summer,
That's amazing.
Decades after, it's what you do by opening those doors and how you treat them, not just opening the door, because I do think it's how you treat them, because it's not just, you're hired. I think, from what I understand, most of you take them sort of under their wing and help them and, guide them to some degree.
I can help guide an actor to nailing that final audition. Once they're on the show, technically my guidance stops. They become under the
executive producer.
The executive producer. And but you still have a connection with that actor because you were there for part of that process and you want to see them succeed. And the door, of course, is always open if an actor needs to come in and have a conversation and what have you. So the relationship doesn't end. just changes after that point, as I'm one of the cogs in the wheel that helped get them to where they are.
A big cog in the wheel, for sure.
A good part of the wheel for an actor.
Yeah,
Sure.
for sure. You had mentioned with Loving, bringing your resume. The job for General Hospital comes along. Tell me that process. And is it a resume that I would send in for a public relations job? What are you presenting to the powers that be at General Hospital for them to say, we want Mark Teschner?
Well, it was much less complicated than that. After 3 years at Loving, they changed producers and they brought in a new producer, Joe Hardy. And Joe was there for about a year. And one day he called me down the hall and said, close the door. And of course, you're like, what did I do? And he told me that he had just been made the producer of General Hospital. And he wanted me to move out. And was I interested? I said, I'm really interested. Do you need to talk to the network execs? He said, no, we already did. Do you want the job? I'm like, yes. And then, a couple of months later, I was living in Los Angeles.
Wow.
So it was the work that I was doing with him that led to that opportunity. And it's funny because back then there was no DVR. So I would record the show on VHS each day to get familiar. I'd come home,
like us fans,
and I would watch it on VHS, watch scenes, and I'd fast forward so that in the month or so before I moved out, I was really aware of the show, who the actors were, just to have some frame of reference before coming out. And so I literally flew out on November 30th, 1989 to start work December 4th, 1989. It just, I remember every detail. When it's a life-changing, wonderful thing like that, you remember it.
Wow. So, we were talking about the connection you make with an actor, your connection to Joe Hardy and how he changed your life.
Yeah. Gave me the opportunity of a lifetime. And unfortunately, television being subject to change and stuff, he was only there for a year. So we did not get to work together too long, but I'm so grateful for an opportunity of a lifetime that, I love casting the show. It's just, I'm so passionate about it. And like you said, I spent about half my life casting the show.
Well, talking Joe, Frank Valentini, God knows how many in between EPs, talk about how you have to have a relationship and a sort of symbiotic relationship with the EP, because they have to trust you and who you're bringing to them.
Yes, the EP runs the show and has their hand in every aspect of the show, not just budget, but creative. And every producer is different and has their own taste. And so I had worked 1 year with Gloria Monty, 10 years with Wendy Rich, 10 years with Jill Phelps, and almost 11 years with Frank. And each producer has their vision. And as a casting director, you want to serve their vision, but you also bring your taste in to say, this is how I see it. It's a real collaboration, and they have to have trust in you. And Frank is very hands-on and very trusting and is very open to, hey, this idea might be a little outside the box, let's do it. And that makes it fun for me, so that you can take chances and take risks, which you have to be willing to do in casting. And every day's an adventure. I get an outline, a script, and it's like, okay, who do I have to start casting today? And as you know, with General Hospital, we're all over the place. Sometimes we're in Port Charles. Sometimes we're in Switzerland. Sometimes we're in Greece. It's just each episode is potentially a whole new show for me of like, where are these characters coming from? But it keeps it interesting. It keeps it fresh. You definitely can't coast. in casting. It's just, there's no day where I just sit back and said, yeah, I'm all caught up, because there's always something. And I don't know, I've got this really, I'm wired a certain way where I always feel like I'm only as good as the last person I cast. So I think that drives me. Okay, you can't, rest on your laurels, because you've got to keep the show fresh.
Hermes Carapeza. I'm an Italian actor from Rome. Do American casting directors, are they interested in Italian actors? Are you looking for several? Well, I feel like you answered that if General Hospital was going to Rome.
But I will say that we're going to hire an actor from here, because it's very hard to hire an actor that doesn't live here, unless it would be a major series regular where we might open up and look. We've cast actors from Australia, as have many things. But for most storylines, we would cast an actor in the country, because they're available immediately to work the next day. There were no visa issues. It's just, it becomes complicated for an actor living in Europe. Honors Hove, who played Faison, by the way,
Yeah.
that was the first contract role I ever cast, was Honors Hove. Not only was it the first contract role, he was the first actor that auditioned for it. Wow. And I still remember his audition. It was an unusual audition scene, but he's talking about refracted light, and he in my office, because they read in my office with me, I'm the reader. He put his hand against the window like he was looking out over the world. There was something so poetic. And the only reason I brought him up was because he was a very well-known Danish actor, but he was living here and immediately available to work.
You read a breakdown, or Frank comes and tells you, I need, somebody to play this part. What's the first thing you do? So
Frank will, if it's a major role, Frank will call me again. We'll sit down and he'll tell me what we're looking for, give me an idea of maybe who they might be paired with romantically. For certain roles, we have wonderful writers, and Elizabeth Cordy will write an audition scene for me that really fleshes out the character. And then I begin the process of seeing actors for that role. In nuts and bolts terms, which I think you're asking, I'll release something called a breakdown to the agents and managers. They send me their ideas. We call them submissions. I go through them and then make a decision on who I feel might be right for the role. And I will see as many actors as I feel are right for the role, because I'd rather take a chance and see too many, because sometimes that last actor that walks in the door may be the answer to your problem, which is casting that particular role. I think I auditioned about 500 actors for Nicholas, about 500 actresses for Esme, out of the thousands that were submitted. For Port Charles, where we had 8 interns on the show. It was Grey's Anatomy before there was Grey's Anatomy. I auditioned 1,750 actors in New York, LA, and Chicago. And back then, you would fly to Chicago. I would fly to New York and audition. And now it's virtual, and they send their auditions in. But the numbers are staggering in terms of 1,750 actors auditioned for it. And even for a day player, a one-day part, we'll get thousands of submissions of actors. And I try to have as many actors audition as possible, because even if they're not right for this role, many times we cast other roles based on actors that previously auditioned for us, where we say, hey, let's use that actor that came in. We like them so much. So when actors audition, I say, you're not auditioning so much to get the role, because that's out of your control. The only thing an actor can control is the quality of their work, the caliber of their art. Getting the roles out of their hands. They're too old, they're too young, they have too much edge, they don't have enough edge, they're too this, too that. But nobody's ever said, oh my God, they're too talented, let's not hire them. So an actor coming in doing good work gets remembered. I always say to actors, my job is to remember, not to forget. You know, I remember when we were casting Brenda, I was seeing a lot of actresses and hundreds, and just feeling on like a gut level, we don't have that yet. And then Vanessa Marcel walked in, and it was one of those things where I think this is it. I think we have it. And it's a funny story about Vanessa, and she tells this story, so I'm not speaking out of school. But when she came into audition, she walked into the waiting room, and there were about 5 or 6 other actresses. And she looked around and she thought, oh my God, these actresses are so beautiful. I'm not going to get this. She got up to leave, and as she was leaving, I opened the door and said, Vanessa. So I called her into, just timing-wise, I called her into audition right before she left. And she always says that the moment she looked at me, she knew she was going to get the role.
That's crazy.
Let me close the door. There's a very
Okay, yeah. I could hear it. I could hear it. Fascinating story.
And by the way, here's the twist to the story. Think about this. Vanessa Marcel walks in and thinks, oh my God, they're so beautiful. I'm not going to get it. At the time she auditioned, she was in the Prince video, The Most Beautiful Girl in the World, as the most beautiful girl in the world, yet she almost left that audition. So
she didn't
kind of glad she didn't.
Because she didn't feel beautiful enough.
Which, you know, and so I just think that human beings have a tendency to sometimes psych themselves out.
Yeah, sabotage,
have all this stuff
sabotage
in their head. Not that she did. Fortunately, she didn't leave, but it's sort of, it really, to me, is about empowerment, that don't judge yourselves around others. You know, for an actor coming in, you can look around the waiting room and think, oh my God, I know that actor from this show. I know that actor from that show. But the truth is, they are auditioning for the role just like you are. So you're there because you really do have an opportunity. Don't psych yourself out.
Smart. Is there anybody you can think of, sort of how you were describing this, that came in for this role, but you cast them as someone else?
Becky Herbst auditioned for a role that she didn't get, but they created the role of Elizabeth for her, and she's been on the show decades, and yet the role that she auditioned for was off the show in about maybe 6 months. Things like that happen. Danelle Turner auditioned for a role that he didn't get, but Frank was like, hold on, keep him on hold. We've got something in mind. And so something emerged for him. So I've got more stories than that. Those are 2 that immediately jumped to mind,
sure.
where they didn't get the role they were originally going in for, and it worked out great for them.
I think that happens more often than not, truthfully.
It happens in daytime because if you have a producer that responds or writers that respond to an actor that doesn't necessarily get the job, sometimes there's a way to bring them on the canvas. Sophia Matson auditioned, tested, didn't get the role. And Frank was like, we have this other role coming up. I want to use her for that. And that started recurring. And then after a few months, it was like, we should put her under contract. So those are stories that I think are hopeful for an actor, that you do the work and sometimes you don't get the job, but another possibility is created that you might not be aware of.
It's true. Jennifer was asking, can you talk about the hiring of James Ryan and the brand new Ethan recast they said everyone is chatting about?
Just through the normal process. When we're auditioning kids for recurring roles, Frank will whittle the, auditions are sent to me. And then I'll watch them and I'll send my favorites to Frank. But for kids, he likes to have them in the office because you really have to see if they can interact and be in the moment. And he just won everybody over. He was, I mean, he just was so charming. You know, it's so self-possessed. I mean, his first ever day on the show was the magician at the nurses' ball. You know, that's a lot to throw a kid into. As far as James Ryan, we auditioned a lot of actors, a lot. And I sent Frank the group that I thought could play it with a full range of actors. And Frank chose James. He wasn't in the office. A lot of our casting since COVID, we've either done Zoom auditions or actors send in their auditions through their agents and managers that we view. So I'll view 500 auditions a week for all the roles that I'm working on at the same time. So I can view auditions when they come in real time. I can view them at night. So I can see a lot of actors, more than I could in person. Because in person, I can see maybe 40, 45 a day, but I may be in a time crunch. So, I can only see 300 actors for this series regular role. Whereas with the way things are now, I can see 400, 500, 600 roles. And then Frank will whittle it down to the ones he wants to see in person or will screen test. Because COVID has changed a lot of the logistics of the casting process. People are not yet ready to have full-blown auditions where you're seeing hundreds of actors a week coming into your environment. And certainly at a network or a studio where you're trying to really maintain very rigorous COVID standards, the people that enter our building either have the job or work on the show. An actor who does come in to audition for Frank or to screen test has to COVID test 48 hours in advance. We have COVID facilities, so we can't just have a lot of actors come in. So it's done literally through this, where I can watch the audition and see as many auditions as I want, and then Frank can see. You know, you could see a lot of what you're looking for through this. Yeah. Does this person, first of all, is there talent? Is there presence? Is there connection? These are all things that, although there's no substitute for the in-person experience, the audience needs to see the ability to connect with someone through the lens as well.
In your 33 years there, is there one role you had to cast that you would consider the most challenging?
You know, this is, I always, it's funny, I get asked that question and I always have the same answer. They're all challenging. But, but that being said, certainly recasting an actor that's leaving the show after a number of years, if you're recasting a popular actor, but they want the character to continue, the recasting is always the toughest, because you want an actor that can come in and make it their own. You don't want a carbon copy of what before, but there's also a very preconceived notion with the audience and the creative team of what the character should be, because it's already been played by someone for such a long time. That, as a casting director, those are, for me, the most challenging things. And because it's a long-running show, there's always the inevitability that a popular actor will leave, but the role has to go on. And I think the best...
I can see that totally being the most challenging, because we are in love with that person, and you want us to fall madly in love with the new one.
And it's very brave of act. I mean, the best example of many really good examples would be Laura Wright, who has made Carly her own, by the way, from day one. And I'm sure a lot of people watching the show aren't aware that she was not the original Carly. We've been through various actresses. But that's an example of when it's right, it's right. And she carries so much on her shoulders. She's just fantastic. So when it works
you
like
took
that,
her from us.
Well, yeah, that's true. It was a big decision for her, because
no, I know. It was
to
the
make
best
the decision to say, do I leave where I'm at, or do I take this leap of faith? And I'm obviously very glad that she took the leap of faith. When we offered it to her, we were hoping this would work out.
And it has in droves. Right? I mean, it really,
for sure.
It certainly has. Is there, on the opposite, the flip side of the most challenging, was there the easiest, sort of big role that you cast that you just, I don't know, somebody walked in and you said Faison, like your first contract role, he's the first person you saw.
Well, it just because it's my instinct that this is the one, it doesn't necessarily mean producer or the writers will feel the same way. So my job is to present options. I can't just say this is it, because you want to give a nice range of actors. So, but there definitely have been actors through the years that come in and Frank will say, that's it. Even though we haven't talent tested, we just had this feeling. But the truth is, the reason we do the screen test for series regulars is because you want to see the magic on the screen beyond just what you've seen in this kind of audition. You're pairing them up with another actor on the show that might be paired opposite them. And so that's a very important step in the process to see it. And sometimes, there'll be an actor who you think going into the screen test, this is it. And either the magic doesn't happen or another actor that tested brings the magic. And it's like, wow, we tested them because we liked them, but wow, what we're getting is just a whole other thing. And when that happens, it's a great feeling. I mean, I still remember Avery Pohl's screen test, how amazing she was in that screen test and blew everybody away in the control room. Most important, you got to blow Frank away, but she really brought it. And Nicholas Chavez flew in from Florida to screen test. He sent his audition in from Florida and flew in, and there was just something about him. And he's a great example of an actor, a young actor that might not have credits or a substantial resume, but who takes the craft seriously. And even if they are raw, they have something that the show is willing to develop. And it wasn't like he wasn't studying acting or pursuing it. And obviously what he's done with that role is pretty extraordinary, his work. But I love those stories where you find someone that it's their first big job, and General Hospital does that. And we help develop people. They still have to bring it. We have to see in them the seed of possibility. Is this somebody the audience is going to connect with? Is there emotional complexity with this actor where the audience will want to watch them every day? So these are all the things that go into the gut instinct of making the right casting decisions.
Is there one role or one person that you had to fight harder for to convince any of the EPs over the years?
There have been a few situations where I've had to be really passionate about it, even though it's not my call. But I'm also paid for my opinion. Yeah. But I guess the funniest,
and your expertise.
And my expertise. The funniest story, the most challenging story is, so Steve Burton was auditioning for the role of Jason. And I felt on a gut level, he was the guy. But randomly, the executive producer at that time said to me, right before the final audition, said, I want all of these guys to be 6 feet tall. Well, that was new information to me. So Steve was wearing Doc Martens, high top. I said to him, how tall are you? He said, I'm 5'10" and a half. I said, you need to be 6 feet in 10 minutes. We went into the bathroom and we stuffed his shoes with the LA Times. And he walked out of the bathroom. He was 6 feet. So I don't know whether I had to fight for him, but I had to maybe move things along in the direction I felt they needed to go. That's one of my favorite stories because it almost doesn't seem real, but it happened.
I love that. I love that. The fans were asking Maurice. Maurice, he had the choice, correct, of two roles?
Yeah. Maurice, we pursued him. He was pretty hot from not just All My Children, but he was a pretty busy actor. And I remember him waiting in my office to bring him in to meet with the producers and have a conversation. And he was offered, I believe it's about 30 years ago, but I'm pretty sure he was offered, okay, we have 2 roles and you can play whichever one you want. We have a contract or we have a 6-month role. He said, I'll take the 6-month role. And 6 months, has turned into 30 years. So he chose right. And by virtue of him, they expanded the role more and more. And he realized, what, this is a really great place. I want to be here. So that's one of the stories. Do you go left or do you go right?
Chose the correct story.
And the actor that was, I guess, the series regular we chose wasn't on the show more than a year or so. So again, great examples of you never know. But I mean that in a good way. You just never know where that opportunity will present itself to you.
And you gave Royalty her first role on General Hospital.
Well, I think yes, Megan. But I think that's been overblown. She did a couple of episodes as Jill, an under 5 nurse, couple of speaking lines. By the way, she happened to be really good. I watched clips of her doing, and I was like, she's really good. But certainly that was not a game changer for her. And then about a year or 2 later, maybe a couple of years later, I brought her in for producers for a role, and she was good, but she didn't get it. She wasn't right. And then maybe a year or 2 after that, I reached out to her agents about another role. And I said, yeah, she's not available. She had started to really book things and became unavailable. But I certainly can't take credit for launching her career. She's been on some really good shows. So, but it's funny how much attention that has gotten.
Oh, totally. Well, because she is royalty.
Yeah. By the way, I was not invited to the royal wedding, and I'm still harboring that and carrying that with me to this day.
Well, if she gets back into the business, maybe we'll see what we can do. General Hospital. Talk about, Roger Howarth and Cynthia Watros and Maura West. How do those casting bits come about? Is it
that those are who Frank wanted? He was very clear. I want Cynthia Watros, Roger, Maura, and that's who we got. Sometimes he's very clear with who he wants with established actors. He understands the tone and the sensibility of that particular actor and what they can bring. And when he wants somebody, we usually get that person. So that came about through Frank. I didn't have to go through a casting process with those characters.
And like a Charles Shaughnessy and Gregory Harrison.
We were looking and we couldn't find the right guy for Gregory Chase, the Gregory Harrison role. And at the last minute, we pursued him and he became available and we offered him that. Charlie, of course, was offered the role. He did an audition. We knew that he was available, and that's who Frank wanted. So 2 very established actors, where they were the right fit for these roles, and we just offered them and hired them for those roles.
I love that.
It's nice when that works out.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You had to cast, you said it earlier, but Port Charles, when it debuted, had 10 series regular roles that you had to go after.
Yeah.
How daunting was that?
It was exciting because it was a new show and it hadn't been on. So it was creating it from scratch. So to be a part of that process was really cool. And it had the nice tie-ins with General Hospital, characters that came into that. It was really fun, challenging, because you're seeing a lot of actors looking for that right person while still casting General Hospital. So, but I loved it. I had a couple of Saturdays where I would come in and see actors on the weekend just to keep up. I had a couple of Saturdays where I auditioned 80 actors a day. And not like squeezing them in, with appointments spread out, but because I needed to in order to see all the actors that I needed to for the roles. I remember coming in for a day of auditions for the role of Chris that Nolan North played. And that was a challenging role to cast, to find the right degree of charm and arrogance and still be appealing. And I saw 82 actors on that day. It was during March Madness, so I had the game on in the waiting room with the sound down. So if the guys that were waiting wanted to check the game, it was on.
That's wild. I can't imagine having to cast an entire show while still doing General Hospital.
I loved it. It was just like, okay, this is a challenge. I'll work 7 days a week to make this happen.
I know I'll ask this question, but I know you can't say if there is much about it, but is there a current big role that you're working on right now?
At the moment, not a huge role at the moment, but that literally can change the next day when Frank will call me in and say, so we've got this role coming up. And that's the beauty of it. Today I'm working on a lot of the guest stars, the day players. I'll probably watch, after we're finished, a couple of 100 auditions. But like I say, tomorrow, Frank can give me a call and say, okay, fasten your seatbelt. We're looking, and we just go for it.
Yeah, I need this tomorrow. What stories are exciting you right now on the air?
I love the show, and I really, there's a lot of stories I like. I'm really fascinated to see what they're doing with the young people, like what's going on with Dex and Jocelyn, Trina and Spencer, seeing the transformation of Esme. How are we going to navigate going from who she started on the show to who she is? So I'm really interested in the character moments and the connection moments with people in those very real storylines.
That's awesome. You talked a lot today about
I just talked a lot today.
No,
just in general.
About screen tests. Is there, so two questions about the screen test. Is there a piece of advice you give to somebody just before they're about to go on stage with Laura Wright or Maura West or somebody if they're screen testing?
I tell them, enjoy the process. You're here because we already think you're good. So you don't need to prove anything about your talent. Just enjoy the process. When you are in that screen test, you are living that role. That role is yours for those 4 minutes. Enjoy it. And most of them really do, and they say it was really fun. Obviously, it's very stressful because an actor's aware that their life could change monumentally in a wonderful way, depending on how things go. But again, you can come in and be wonderful, but not be quite right. So I tell the actors, I go to each actor before and I say, just enjoy the process. You're here because you deserve to be, and you're one of 5, 6, 7 actors out of 500, 600 that are here. So we already like you. Just do your thing.
If a friend of your daughter's came to you today and said, I want to get into this business, what's the best piece of advice you would give to somebody today about getting,
Well, it would be
except don't get into it.
Except that, well, it would be the same advice, I wouldn't just give to an 18-year-old friend of my daughter. It would be the same advice I'd say to anyone, which is the only reason to become an actor is because you love acting. You love the craft of acting. You love the artistry of what it is to be an artist and be an actor. You do not do this to become famous. That it doesn't work that way. Do not do this because you think you'll get more followers. The only reason to become an actor is because you ache to be an actor. And then you have to be willing to walk the walk, not just do the talk, and get in class and study every week and grow as an actor, because all the actors are doing it. And I tell an actor, if you're not getting better every week, you're getting worse. It's like going to the gym. Acting is a muscle and you've got to use it. And it's just so competitive. It has to be for the right reasons. In fact, the word is passion. If you don't have passion to act, don't do this, because it's too heartbreaking otherwise.
Before I let you go, I know General Hospital lost two very dear people this year, Sonia Eddy and your producer. I don't know how to pronounce her first name, so I don't.
Nika Garland.
Nika Garland. Would you share memories of both of them?
Sure.
Sorry.
They're both, no, it's a beautiful question. I'm glad that you brought it up. Were very wonderful people. Sonia brought so much to the show. She was the heart of the nurses station, and she was fun and sassy in real life, just like her character. Everybody loved working with her, and her contribution's indelible. And I think they did an amazing tribute episode to her. I watched it twice. It was so beautiful. And Nika was just a gift. She was an amazing woman. She was so kind and had such heart. And she became friends with so many of us. And one of her jobs as a producer was the scheduling of the boards week in, week out. What shows are taping on this day? What actors are needed this day?
One of the hardest.
It's amazingly stressful, amazingly. And then she did it with such grace, and it would be really stressful, and yet she kept her cool, which in turn helps everybody keep their cool, because I'd be like, hey, I need to book the actors for next week. And she'd say, well, we got some changes. Are so-and-so available? And I'd have to find out. But she was always available. There was never a moment where I felt her stress. And she just became, she was a friend. She was a friend to all of us, and very loved. But what she did, she made a very difficult job look easy.
I could truly feel the love that the General Hospital family had for both of these.
For sure.
In their passing. I happened to be with Rick Hurst, I believe, the day she passed, your producer passed, or the day after.
Right.
And I know how, upset he was, and he hasn't been there in, a number of years.
But when somebody has impact on you, they stay with you forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Mark, such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm all about celebrating the show. So if this is one small part of it, I am appreciative that you reached out. This was a lot of fun.
I'm so glad. I am so glad. And everybody knows General Hospital, Monday through Friday on ABC at 3:00 Eastern. Mark, you have a great afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
Enjoy watching those 100 tapes today.
I'll enjoy most of them. Thank you, and have a great day.
I hope so. You too. Bye. Thanks, everybody, for watching today. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Did anybody who is watching see any of your favorite General Hospital stars out over the weekend? I know many of the cast were here on the East Coast. Look who I got to see. I have not seen these two women in person in years, and it warmed my heart to see Maura West and Cynthia Watros. Coastal Entertainment did a fabulous job at the Stress Factory comedy location in New Jersey. They were very close to my house, so I went out to see these two women. Don't miss Friday's episode of The Locker Room. Carolyn Hinsey, Michael Fairman, and Stephanie Sloan will join me live to celebrate the 50th anniversary of The Young and the Restless and the 60th anniversary of General Hospital. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so down below. If you liked today's episode, which I hope you did, please click the like button. I will see you all on Friday. Have a great afternoon, everybody. And thanks, as always, for watching. Be safe.